Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined once again by Dallas Winston and Zane Simon for the MMA Vivisection, the in-depth preview of UFC Fight Night, Atlantic City UFC Fight Night, Cerrone versus Miller, in which I may be making a sentimental pick for the hometown kid and the headliner, but I'm racked with doubt and angst about it, but we'll get to that later. Actually, we decided on the Care Don't Care yesterday with Eugene S. Robinson that this is a pretty careful card. There's a lot of fights to be of interest to even a semi-casual MMA fan, such as I would have to consider myself these days. But let's start out. And this is going to be on Wednesday night on Fox Sports 1 with one fight on Fight Pass, and that fight is the first ever UFC women's strawweight bout, 115 pounds. Claudia Gahela versus Tina Latamaki. And Gahela is like coming in with a ton of hype against a little Finnish girl who has none, and the odds reflect that. Who wants to talk about this fight first?
I think we both probably do.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zane.
All right.
All right.
We'll let
Yeah.
Zane go since he's got his new bookcase stocked and loaded.
Oh yeah. Totally. No, I'm pretty excited about this. Definitely. I mean, Goodell's got hype as far as I'm concerned. She was the title challenger and I think champion in waiting in Invicta. She was set to fight Carla Esparza two or three times, and injuries to various parties kept canceling that fight. So I see her kind of being primed as the first title challenger the moment that Tough 20 is done and they crown their new champ. She's going to be waiting in the wings to fight whoever comes out of that show. And this is just a tune-up fight in that vein. A lot of
Have they said how the strawweight title is going to be determined? Is the
it's the tough champion gets the title.
gets the title? That's novel, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting. Well, go ahead.
I really wish they'd have another tournament like they did with the flyweights.
Well, that's what the tough tournament is.
Yeah, but it's a tough.
Yeah,
I mean, they're both bracketed
strawweight out there. Is,
They're
outside
both
the tournament.
bracketed tournaments. There's no different. Like the format isn't any different. There's just more people in it.
And some of those fights are exhibitions, and some of them are real professional fights. Big
Well,
difference.
yeah, but I mean, in terms of how it's set up, it's not like a round robin or anything. Like,
Let's not split hairs, bro.
Yeah,
okay,
you're splitting hairs.
I got you.
You're splitting hairs. So,
so yeah, Goodell's should be a big favorite. Latamaki is not big even. Well, yeah, even at 115, she's not big, and Gadelha is maybe I don't think she's any taller. No, she's no taller, but she's kind of a monster. So I expect her to smash and move on.
I see. In Dallas, your picks?
Question for both you guys is: has there been a lot of hype about Gadella?
Yes.
Has there?
Well, in terms of how much hype there is for any female fighter not named Ronda Rousey.
So, I mean, I'd go so far as to stamp her as like the next big thing. Kind of. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but she is a killer, and very marketable as well. Easy on the
How's her
eyes.
English language skills?
That I don't know, and I
Decent.
don't.
Not bad. Let me put it this way. She was not the only reason she's not on Tough is not because of her English, but because she couldn't make weight for three straight times in a month.
Ah,
Really?
I see.
Yep.
Huh.
I didn't know that.
She's huge at 115 and she really drains herself to cut weight, and so she couldn't cut weight for the show that often.
Well, the only reason I kind of raised a flag on Tough is because the tournament debate or whatever is historically the fighters on Tough aren't always the best.
Yeah, but that's
So
not the case for this season. I mean, Gadelha would not be the outright favorite to win the whole show if she were on it.
who would be?
There's four. It's a four-way tie, basically, between Gadelha, Esparza, Torres, and Calderwood.
Yeah, okay, solid. I mean, I mean, this this is going to be pretty good as far as
Yeah,
In the interest of web traffic, what can we do to make sure Felice Herrig wins?
nothing.
host picks.
No chance? No
Kneecap
chance?
her opponents. I
Oh,
mean,
well.
she
Felice
got
is lovable though.
she got beat bell to bell by Tisha Torres just a few months ago.
I
So
see. I see.
Felice is lovable for sure, though. She might not be the
Oh yeah,
best, but definitely game
she's
and
fun. I like her. She gets a lot of hate that I don't quite understand, but I like her a lot, and
yep,
she's a
me
fun
too.
fighter to watch. But
So
Unless
yeah,
you think I'm letting the show spiral out of control, we're spending more time on this because this is an important fight, being the
yeah,
debut of the women's strawweight, and because Gatella is a likely title contender. So go ahead, Dallas, make your pick.
I mean, Gadella for sure. And I think just yesterday she posted a quick little Instagram of her hitting the mitts, and it's one of those where just watch this girl hit the mitts, and you can see that this is serious shit coming on. So,
yeah.
and I don't want to paint it like she's going to come in and just annihilate everybody, but I'm kind of out of touch with the MMA sewing circle or whatever. But I haven't personally heard a lot of big buzz, and I just want to say this is definitely a fight to keep your eyes on for sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
she's got speed and power in her hands and throws straight punches, which is always nice for the women's division. Somebody who really actually fires straight from her shoulders, and her top game is brutal, and her wrestling game is great, and her grappling is fantastic. So
Cyborg-esque is her striking, Joe.
yeah,
Wow. Well, the odds makers like her. Odds makers like her too. They've got her favorite anywhere minus 370 all the way up to minus 450. We're getting our odds from bestfightodds.com if you're so inclined to commit the venal sin of gambling. And Tina Latimaki, the Finnish gal, is underdogging it from the tune of plus 270 all the way up to plus 361. So if you're a Finnish loyalist, you might want to drop a dime on that one. And up next, we've got two lightweights, your Disney Pink Panthers, Cedeno and Jared Sanders coming in. Who wants to talk about this one first? Dallas, you can take this one first since you had the last one first.
Well, Sanders is he's a good new candidate for the UFC. Big boy. I want to say he trains at ATT. I'm not sure, but I think he trains at a
He trains at ATT Oklahoma City, which is not quite the same. But
okay. Legit prospect, not really a huge finisher, but a D1 All-American. I want to say he was the wrestling coach at a reputable big college too. He's a pretty, big boy. I'm guessing he works out. Real physically imposing and powerful guy. Cedeno's not bad either. I don't have a good beat on Ernest Chavez, who he lost to by split in his debut, I believe. But this will be a kind of an interesting test for Sanders. His credentials are good. His record's good. I think he's going to be the favorite here, but he hasn't really fought a lot of top level or UFC level opposition. So I'll go with Sanders in this one.
and Zane, and also our homeboy, according to Sherdog, Josh Salmon trains at the MMA Masters with Cedeno. So I was hoping for some inside info. You let me down, guys.
well, all right, yeah.
All right, Zane, what are you going to say about
Yeah,
this
we're
fight?
letting you down by not having enough information. I'm sorry, Nate. that that
Yeah,
that.
And it's
But
Saman too. He clarified that. Saman.
yeah. Saman.
anyway, yeah, Cedeno. I feel kind of bad because I thought I was pretty interested in Cedeno coming into the UFC. He's got a really exciting basically high risk, flashy style. Throws a lot of really powerful kicks and lunging strikes and things like that. But and he's looked pretty good on the regional circuit, but he doesn't have the energy and the fitness and the output to keep it up in the UFC. And Ernest Chavez was pretty much a tailor-made opponent for him to show off against. Somebody who, I mean, he already's dropped down to featherweight. He's an undersized lightweight. He's not a bad boxer, but not a real diverse striker. Somebody like Cedeno should have beat, and the fact that he didn't is a pretty bad testament to his overall style and how he fights. And so I'm definitely Sanders being a wrestler, somebody who can really, put some top control grind on him, and who even has shown himself to be a decent finisher as a wrestler. Um, he's got the advantage here. I'd expect him to win, even though I was hoping to see something good out of Cedeno.
All right, and so the odds makers have it fairly even, probably because they don't know much about these guys. They've got Sanders favored, just like our panel, anywhere from minus 140 all the way up to minus 165. Cedeno is the underdog anywhere from plus 110 all the way up to plus 144. And that brings us to bantamweights Hugo Viana and Aljamain Sterling. You go the Wolverine Viana. Zane, it's your turn to go first.
Uh, um, it's hard not to be excited for Aljamain Sterling, honestly. I mean, he's a Serra-Longo prospect, and not only is he Serra-Longo, but he's Serra-Longo coming out of Bomb Squad, which was, the team that brought up John Jones. So he's already getting a lot of comparisons to John Jones early on in his career, or at least he was on the regional circuit.
And when he fought Cody Gibson at UFC 170, they mentioned that
Yeah,
numerous times.
and
But I didn't see it. I mean, the guy's
no,
not
I don't.
tall
I
and
mean,
lanky.
it's a mindless comparison. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's a geographical comparison,
Yeah,
really.
really, more than anything else. But him training, I think, like, I personally feel like him moving to Serra-Longo is a much better move than John Jones moving to Jackson Winklejohn. I think Serra-Longo is going to do a lot more to round out his technical game and make him a better striker, make him a better grappler, and keep his high output wrestling skill honed. Biggest things that Sterling's shown, he's got a high output kicking game at range. He likes to really use his legs a lot to keep in control distance. And then he's really powerful in the clinch and on takedowns. Got a good top control ground and pound game. He's just a good fighter. He's a lot more well-rounded than Viana, but Viana's a great test because Viana's really perfected the sort of sprawl and brawl style at featherweight. He keeps his composure, he keeps distance real well, and he just throws bombs from the outside. So Sterling's got to stay composed and keep to his wrestling and stick with what he's good at and not try and screw around too much at range.
And so you're picking Sterling.
I'm picking Sterling, but it's a tough fight. It's a good step up for him. It's a little bit like when we saw Pettis the Younger take on
Bruce Leroy.
Bruce Leroy, I would say.
Which ended badly for Pettis the Younger.
Which ended badly for Pettis, but Viana's a little more one-dimensional.
All right, and Dallas, your picks and thoughts?
Agree with everything Zane said, but Viana's just mean. I mean, the nickname Wolverine is very fitting for this guy. I really like him. Is there a big height difference, Nate? I don't know if you have that in front of you or can peep that out.
Sterling is 5'7", and Viana is
A little shorter. Not
Yeah,
5'6".
he's 5'6". But again, you always have to take these height estimates with a grain of salt. They don't get a tape measure out on these guys.
Well-
These are self-reported.
Well, and Viana's like all arms, basically. I mean, that's the thing. He's not a tall guy, but he's got that GSP build where it's just like a little triangle with really long arms and legs attached.
a little mutton chop
He's
triangle.
got a 67-inch reach, which for a guy that height is ape-tastic.
Okay. I mean, I think Zane broke this down pretty well. To me, it's going to be a big test for Sterling because he's got, the coaching structure, and I also agree that, and maybe, Serra-Longo is coming up and should be considered a premier camp now. When Zane made the reference to Jackson Winklejohn, from the outside looking in, my opinion, it would just seem that a fighter would maybe thrive more with Serra-Longo because you can get a little bit more individual attention. And that's tough because it's kind of a compliment to Jackson Winklejohn. There's just so many damn top fighters there.
Yeah.
And Ray Longo is excellent, man. I really like that guy. He's confident. He's got a little attitude, but he's got all kinds of credentials and knowledge and to back it up. So I'm going to kind of lean towards Viana, and it's more that he's proven himself as Zane said, he's one-dimensional, but he's a guy that he makes that one dimension work. And it's not like he's a jiu-jitsu guy where he has to go through all these steps to get the fight where he wants it. I mean, he's a brawler. He wants to get it in phone booth range. He's a pretty solid grappler, but he's more of a power guy. He's not a finesse guy at all, and he is a mean little son of a bitch. So I'm going to kind of lean his way, but it's just because Sterling, I want to see him a little more against top competition, and because Viana has such a specific skill set, that will require, that means Sterling would, really benefit from a fairly well-crafted strategy. And I just don't have enough evidence yet to see if he can. I know the camp can put that together, but, I don't know if he can keep him out at distance and avoid that. So just too many questions, so I'm going to go with Viana. But close fight, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Dallas is coming to us from the Show Me state of Missouri.
I mean, I do really actually think that the Pettis Caceres thing is a pretty apt comparison for how, like, it's a fight that Sterling is expected to win by a lot of people, but he could very easily drop. And unlike that time when I picked Caceres, I'm picking Sterling here, so who knows, maybe this time it'll come back to bite.
See, so our panelists split and the odds makers are not. And you guys killed my joke about Dallas being from the wrong state. I put a lot of thought into that. And
that needed to die on the vine.
Oh well, Dallas, show me Winston. Likes you go Viana, but the odds makers don't. They've got Viana, the underdog, anywhere from plus 150 up to plus 182. Aljamain Sterling, the hype seems to be catching on with the bettors. He is favored anywhere from minus 200 all the way, minus 192 all the way up to minus 210. And that brings us to women's bantamweights, Jessamyn Duke and Leslie Smith. And Zane, you can start us off.
All right. Yeah, I think this is an interesting. This is definitely. I think it maybe like looking at our staff picks, it may be a trap fight for odds in that everybody seems to be going with Duke, and I think Leslie Smith suffered from a really bad debut. I mean, she stepped up and fought. What's her name? Sarah Kaufman on like 4 or 5 days' notice. If that. It was really, really short notice, and she looked totally overwhelmed and unready for it. And this is somebody who less than a year before that had gone to a split decision that a lot of people had thought she'd won with Kaufman. So it was, it was a huge step back for her in terms of performance right there, and it's one that I think has to mostly be attributed to the short notice and no camp for the fight. I mean, especially considering that just not long before that she'd been fighting for the Invicta title at 125 and was competitive. She didn't win or come terribly close to winning, but it's still a very competitive fight. And Duke hasn't shown that yet. I mean, I would pick Duke on a full camp to look just as bad against Sarah Kaufman right now. And so with that, I mean, I think Leslie Smith coming off a full camp has the advantage over Duke in every area. Duke doesn't use her range well. Leslie Smith mixes up her strikes a lot more. She's much more aggressive, much more consistent, has shown better cardio, and I think she's just a much better fighter right now.
Let's see. And Dallas, your take?
I'd probably give Jessamyn the striking technique advantage. But Zane brings up a good point in that we can't necessarily, judge Leslie off her debut because it was super, super short notice. And Kaufman is, the consummate professional. I actually thought Kaufman was smarter in the second fight, and she really relied on her technique and didn't really, I don't want to say get lured into a brawl, but she definitely didn't stand and slug it out with Davis. So I'm open to Davis. I'm not judging her on that first. I'm sorry, Leslie Smith. I'm sorry. I'm not, gonna come. I'm open to give her another chance, and I don't want to judge her exclusively on that debut. I'm probably gonna pick Jessamyn just because it's corny, but I got a little soft spot for her. I don't know. She's likable. I really like her Thai technique, but this is a really, really tough opponent for her because. Leslie's the type of fighter that can negate your technique by just slinging leather at your jaw, so this is going to be a big test of heart and fortitude, as well as, Jessamyn's ability to use her range, footwork, and takedown defense. Those are going to be pretty critical. Well, I don't want to say they're going to be critical, but the better she does in those aspects, I think the better her chances are of winning. So I'm really interested in this. It's kind of a coin flip. I'll take Jessamyn, kind of a sentimental pick.
All right, and the odds makers agree with Zane and differ with Dallas. They've got Smith favored anywhere from minus 137 all the way up to minus 145. Not a huge range there.
That's
Jessamine
fair.
Duke is the underdog from plus 102 all the way up to plus 124. And that brings us to lightweights. Gleason Tibau versus Pat Healy, who are headlining the preliminary portion of the Fox Sports 1 card. The last 4 fights have all been on Fox Sports 1, so this will be the headliner of the prelim portion, which is a fairly irrelevant distinction. But Dallas, you want to take this one first? The Battle of the Lightweight Titans?
Yeah, sure. These guys are both bruisers. I got it. This is one of those where even though it's a close fight, right? As soon as I heard it, I was leaning towards Tebow. Healy, I got to give him credit. Before when he was moving forward, it was all straight lines. It was really predictable, and he's not real fleet of foot or agile. So not a lot of angles. I mean, he would kind of lumber into range, and he has some decent punches, and he really puts good weight behind some of his punches, but it was pretty plain and basic, and he always wants to tie up, get you in a clinch, and the guy is just a phenomenal grappler. If this hits the ground, even though these guys have maybe comparable credentials, I would give Healy the advantage on the ground here. To me, I think that Gleason I think he moves better, even though I think he's more well-rounded. He's kind of proven that his boxing is good, he stays on balance, and he's poised.
And he's got
So
excellent wrestling. I mean, when you say Healy's got the better ground game, you're referring to a submission grappling, or who do you think has the better wrestling?
probably Healy, but to me, that's going to be what I would call more circumstantial. So, it's almost irrelevant if these guys were in a wrestling match because I think it's going to be opportunistic. And I do think that because Tebow moves a little better, he's more comfortable with his boxing, that he's going to be able to transition into takedowns with better timing and catch Healy off guard. I do want to say, though, that Healy has actually, it's been incremental, but he's shown some good improvement. I don't remember one of his last 2 fights, which one it was, but he started to use his jab, pretty well. Everything that I just said that was kind of a knock on him, he started to clean those up a little bit. So I think this is really even, but to me, I think the speed of Tebow's hands and his quickness and that, even though they have comparable skills, that Tebow is a little more diverse and cycling between them. So to me, that is the slight edge that I'm going to give for my Tebow pick.
All right, and Zane?
This is a tough fight, and partially just because I am really not very interested in it.
You just
it
like
may
the
not even.
shiny and new. You don't like the proven veterans like Tebow and Healy, the grinders, the gritty guys.
I don't like the 2 guys that are just gonna grind it out for 3 rounds against.
It says something that me, Nate, and Eugene all gave this a care, and
Yeah,
Zane Simon gave
because
it a
when you
don't
got 2
care.
grinders, you got sparks flying. When you got flint on flint,
I put it
sparks
this
will
way.
fly.
I don't. It's probably not even gonna be a bad fight. It's just not a relevant fight. A win doesn't get either of these guys anything.
Well, a loss might get Pat Healy out of the UFC.
Yeah, but maybe right now they're not cutting anybody again. So saying somebody might be gone, there's no guarantees. I mean, what was it? Oh shoot, who's the guy? The Spaniard, Charlie Brenneman's got another fight coming in the UFC, and he's on like back-to-back first round, first minute knockout losses.
That's
That
true.
is
That's true.
surprising, actually.
So, I'm leaning towards Tebow on this, and it's weird because Tebow's not really at as good a place as any of the people that Healy's just lost to. Healy's on a 3-fight skid, but Khabib Nurmagomedov, Bobby Green, and George Masvidal. So Tebow's not quite there anymore. He's not quite at that level. But I guess I kind of expect this to go like every other Tebow fight, that he wins, which is that he's going to be the bigger, stronger fighter and better maybe in the clinch than Healy, because that was what I was really disappointed in Healy's loss to Masvidal, is that Healy showed some really good dirty boxing, especially working to the body in that fight, but he only ever used it as a way to get into the clinch and get into this grinding stall mode where he didn't actually work on any offense. And I think that if he tries to get to there against Tebow's going to have an advantage inside in that like cage pressure game. And I just see this as the kind of fight that Tebow wins the first 2 rounds, gets tired, and drops the third. That's basically how I'm seeing this fight.
Maybe not beef wise, but isn't Healy going to have several inches on Tebow height wise?
Probably. Healy is 6 foot, and
What are you laughing at,
I
Nathan?
nothing, Dallas. Nothing
Don't
at all.
Tebow Tebow is 5'9", but so Healy is very much bigger, but not bigger. I mean, there aren't many. There's nobody at lightweight really bigger than Tebow.
He's taller.
He's taller.
Yes, Healy's taller. To me, it's an interesting one because Healy's got the classic team quest, get him in the phone booth and beat him up kind of style, and Tebow excels at the double legs and the singles from the outside. So, but he does also like to push people up against the fence. So to me, it's like two muggers meeting in a dark alley, and who's going to get clubbed. I can see Zane's argument where this fight doesn't matter, but because I'm familiar with these guys, I care. Really want to see Healy win this, but I got to pick Tebow too. The odds
To me,
makers.
there's no question. Sorry to interrupt you, Nate, but these guys are absolutely UFC level. I'm not saying
Oh
it's
yeah.
relevant to the division, but I mean,
I'm not. That's no knock of like, oh,
I'm,
these guys don't belong there. It's just one of those things where I like to see a fight where it's like one guy has a potential to move up with a win over somebody, where like a win over somebody really propels them forward and pushes them onto something new. Whereas
I
these
got you.
guys have both been around for so long and they've gotten so established that it just feels like them facing off against each other doesn't really like it doesn't tell me anything new about either anybody.
It's almost
To
like
me, it
it's not.
tells me who's going to win this fight, which is an open question.
Well,
To
sure.
me, it's not like the winner hugely benefits from this, but whoever loses this fight is going to take a big hit.
Yeah, well,
Especially if it's an ass whipping.
Healy more so than T-Bow. T-Bow's one, on his normal win two, drop one, streak at the moment. That's pretty much how T-Bow's entire career is. So,
Yeah, and the odds makers, they agree with Zane and myself. They've got Tebow favored, but not by a huge margin. He's up from -130 all the way up to -160. Healy is the dog from +115 all the way up to +141. So if
They
you're,
agree with all three of us, Nate.
oh, you picked Tebow too?
Indeed,
I'm trying to put
indeed.
words in your mouth. I'm trying to put words in your mouth and you're messing me up. All right, so we move on to
Rather
the
have it be
opener of
words.
the main card on Fox Sports 1. Featherweights Lucas Martins and Alex White. Zane, your turn to go first.
all right, this is a tough fight to pick. I mean, both guys are low defense, high offense brawlers. That's how they fight. Martins has shown a little more diversity, jumping on the guillotine and choking out Hernandez, or was the rear naked choke? Uh, Choking out Hernandez. Yeah, the rear naked choke in his last fight. He's also had a lot of trouble figuring out what weight he should fight at. He started at lightweight, dropped to bantamweight, now he's at featherweight. I think featherweight was actually where he belonged all along, but he hasn't ever fought there. So this
Sorry,
is
I didn't know he went
no,
out. Who did he fight at bantamweight?
yeah, he fought Junior Hernandez.
All the way down at bantamweight. I didn't even
Yep.
realize that.
Started at lightweight against Barboza and Jeremy Larson, and then went down to bantamweight and is now going up to featherweight, which is much better because he's 6 foot. So fighting at 135 was kind of ridiculous and skeletal. Um, and White is like he's the kind of guy where his technique isn't that polished. He's maybe not the fastest guy in the world, but he's got a lot of natural power. Just that ability to take 3 shots and land one and hurt somebody really badly with that one shot he lands. And honestly, Martins is so hittable and has shown that he can be a bit chinny. Like I don't know that he's ever lost by knockout. Well, he lost submission due to punches to Barboza, but he's every fight that he's been in, he except for that Hernandez fight, he's gotten buzzed pretty badly and hurt. Um, and so I think that his ability to get hit in the clinch and get hurt, or hit inside and get hurt, is going to really benefit White, and White's going to land something hard and shut him down.
And Dallas, what do you think of that?
Let me pose a counter to that because I would agree with what you said about Martins, but it seems that he's fought a lot better competition than White, and that might potentially justify why he's gotten tagged a little more. Your thoughts on that, Zane?
Well, certainly Barboza's much better competition, but Barboza just beat the pants off him. Other than that, I don't know that Jeremy Larson or Junior Hernandez are in any way, shape, or form better than Estevan Payan.
Yeah, okay, fair point. Um, Either way, this is going to be a scrap for sure. And this is actually kind of just to take a step back. This is an awesome card. I mean, we've been critical of certain things, the matchmaking, the lineup, all this shit. This is on paper one of the better cards of the year, I would say. And this
I'm
is going to
looking
be,
forward to it.
yeah, this is going to be good. And this is an excellent way to open up the main card because it could be a slugfest that goes all 3 rounds, or either one of these guys could just fucking curb stomp the other quickly. As Zane said, high power offense on both sides here. I would guess I think Martin's a little more dynamic with his stand-up. White is a little bit more of a, I was going to say boxer, but a little more of a puncher, but he's not afraid to, slip a spinning back fist in there. And he is really mean, but he's kind of like the calculating type of mean, where he'll still come in and take a few punches, but the entryway he comes in and his strike selection are very intelligent, which is, I always like that combination of kind of a brawler and a gamer who's got a head on his shoulders as well. So this one could go either way. I'm just kind of leaning Monero on this one. Old shootbox guy, arguably, per my conversation with Zane just now, maybe a little more experienced, but I don't know. Either way, this is going to be one to sit back and enjoy for sure.
The odds makers have White favored, but not by a huge margin. This is a repeating theme on this card. They've got White at minus 160, minus 157, all the way up to minus 175. Martins is favored, or the underdog, from plus 125 up to plus 145. So
I mean, it's worth noting Martin's only loss is Barboza, right? Am I right
Yep.
there?
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And
I
so,
don't believe White has lost yet, though. Yeah, White's
And
undefeated.
he's undefeated, yeah.
and that brings us to flyweights. Alptekin Ozkilik, the Turkish delight, against John Lineker, the man who cannot make the flyweight limit, although he promises this time he will make 125. Zane, I believe it is your turn.
All right, well, I got to go Lineker all the way here. Weight problems are not, hopefully he fixes that, because I think that is one of the few things that right now the UFC would look to cut him for, is if he missed weight again and he lost, he would get cut. And if he missed weight and he won, he might even get cut at this point. I mean, I can't imagine they have much patience for him anymore. But Ozkilich is a very good wrestler in a division where wrestling does not mean nearly as much as it does anywhere else. And he's not a good striker. Just not. I mean, I would argue that he got outstruck by Darren Uyenoyama in their fight, and it was just Uyenoyama's complete inability to keep the fight standing for any length of time and get back to his feet that lost him that fight. Whereas Smolka was easily able to get right back up every time he got taken down, or to stuff takedowns, and just totally overwhelmed Ozkilich. And Lineker is every bit as good a striker as Smolka, if not better, and is athletic enough to get up and to scramble and to, make the fight take place for extended periods of time standing up.
So that's your pick.
Yeah, Lineker in a landslide.
Okay. All right, and Dallas, your pick.
Well, just Zane, so you know, I always touch on different things I feel differently about. So whenever you say things, I'm not like arguing or
No,
necessarily.
whatever. That's what we're here for.
I think I would love to see Smolka fight Lineker. I think that would be a killer matchup. I'm not quite sure. I actually, the reason I said that, I think Smolka is the better striker, because Lineker is just alternating hands, right, lefts, machine gun pace, and not by any means, like, I'm not demeaning that style at all, but and Smolka was really big. I want to say, and I don't know, I started to bring up the size thing again, but I want to say he was a hulking flyweight and he had a lot of height
Smolka's
and reach.
5'9", maybe even 5'10". He's huge for flyweight.
And to me, that makes a big difference, in a striking comparison. So just a quick kind of review on me and Lineker. I'm open to the fact that just the Godino fight, really, I've maybe hung on to that too long, and I'm saying that because I know I'm a jackass if I'm putting too much emphasis on that fight. But after that, and even when Lineker started to do better, I kind of had him as a little bit more of a frenzied volume puncher with not a lot of power, but now he's started to really, and maybe again, he always had that, I'm just now noticing, but put some serious snap on his punches. And I agree with Zane. I feel like we talked about that at some point because flyweight is so dynamic with all the transitions and back and forth that wrestling is de-emphasized more than usual. But I would say this matchup right here, this is almost a pure striker versus wrestler matchup. So out of all the flyweight matchups, I would say that wrestling might be a big deal here. I'm gonna go with Oskilic, and it's not that I'm super high on him, but I haven't seen Lineker defend takedowns against a solid wrestler consistently enough to lead me to believe he can just put Oskilic out on his feet before he gets taken down. So I think this might be ugly. And again, I'm not positive on this, but I want to say Lineker didn't have phenomenal escapes off his back when he was taken down early. Maybe this is all a tribute to Godino in his top game that I'm underrating. So with all those elements in mind, my take on it is that I think Oskilic can kind of turn this into a grapple fest and, make it ugly and win a decision here.
I kind of have some sympathy with Dallas's point of view. I just don't trust Lineker. He's a Gicta for me at this point. But the odds makers agree with Zane. They've got Lineker pretty heavily favored, the most heavily favored since the opening fight of the card, anywhere from minus 270 all the way up to minus 333. And Oskilic is the underdog, anywhere from plus 215 all the way up to plus 243. So
That's a good chance bet right there. If anyone might want to throw a couple pennies for a good payout, that might be just one to keep.
I don't know about that. Yeah, maybe. I'm not seeing it.
Yeah,
I don't think this is a close fight. And I like.
Are you looking for a finish or a decision?
I'm looking for a finish. I mean, I like Darren Yanayama. I think he's a fun fighter. I like watching him fight, but I don't think he's athletically capable of keeping up with the flyweight division in the way it is right now. And he's not a very good striker at all. And Oskilic had nothing for him standing up at all. So you're talking about a guy who does not strike well at all. Fighting somebody who has a lot of power and a lot of speed and a lot of ability to mix it up and go hard round after round.
All right,
but a guy that can put almost everyone he's fought on his back.
It's flyweight. I just don't think that's that important. And Smolka, he couldn't really keep Smolka down at all. So.
I see. And you're saying that wrestling isn't that important at flyweight because they don't have the mass to do massive damage on ground and pound, or they can't hold the other.
Because they don't have the mass for top control. Because it's harder when you get somebody down to keep them from switching and wriggling out from under you and all that. I mean, you don't see many top control grinding performances at flyweight unless one of the two fighters is just not that athletically gifted.
All right, and we'll move along with that to lightweights Joe Proctor and Justin Salas. Possibly the fight I'm least stoked about on this main card. Dallas, I'll let you have it first.
It's not that it's a bad fight, and I think it's just that the rest of the card is so solid, but this is probably one that I'm looking forward to least. Don't really have a strong feeling. I can see either guy taking this. Somewhat similar styles. I'm and I don't know. I'm tempted to say that Proctor might have an advantage standing, but I'm not feeling too confident about this. So I don't even remember who I picked on the care don't care, but and I don't even know who I'm going to pick now. It's kind of a coin flip for me, to be honest. So I guess I'll pick Proctor. Yeah. Okay.
And Zane, your pick?
Sorry, not a lot of real deep insight on that.
No,
one.
I mean, I think unfortunately, the truth for me is that neither of these guys has been particularly impressive in the UFC at all. Um, Silas has been notably inconsistent. He looked absolutely terrible against Thiago Tavares. Uh, just looked like he'd never grappled before in his life against Thiago Tavares and got shelled by Tim Means. And they're both really good fighters. But, they're also not necessarily the kind of guys who usually go out and make people look like they've never been in a fight before. So, those are pretty big black marks against Salas, and unfortunately, his win over Ben Wall. A lot of people, I talked to some people during and after that fight, and they said, "Oh, Salas really looks like, his striking really looks improved in that fight, but Ben Wall is about as low on the totem pole for the UFC's talent acquisitions as is possible. So it's hard to take anything away from beating Ben Wall." And a 2013 split decision against Aaron Riley is definitely not a positive sign. I mean,
not in this date and time. Maybe 10 years ago it would have been pretty hot. The odds makers though, they like Salas. They've got him favored from -130 up to -150. Joe Proctor, the underdog, from +110 up to +120. But let's move on to a much more interesting fight. Welterweight Rick Story against UFC debutant Leonardo Mafra. And Zane, you wasted some thoughts on me in the green room, violating the David Letterman green room rule. Don't talk about the content of the show before the show, but tell us what you said and make it even better than when.
Before you go, it's not Mafra's debut. He fought at 147.
Yes, you are correct. Thank you, Dallas.
His return debut.
His return. There you go. His return debut. I like that. I'm going to be using that again. Go ahead, Zane.
Basically, this is a big trap fight for Rick Story, and it's set up. He should win it. Rick Story's still top 20, top 25 welterweight, I would say, in the UFC right now. Guy who's just floating around the edges of the very best. His fight with Gastelum was really competitive. I thought Story may have won that fight. I thought it was certainly razor thin. And Gastelum's, continued to climb way up the ranks on the strength of that win. So I think it says something about where Story still should be in the division. But Mafra is the exact kind of terrible fight that a fighter in Story's position does not want to get. He's really, really fast, really strong, and really aggressive, and he has no compunction whatsoever about just getting in the phone booth and slinging leather until somebody gets knocked out. His only problem is really that he doesn't move his head when he strikes, so that he can be hit pretty hard in return. But I'm expecting that this first round is maybe an ugly one for Story. It may be a survival round. I kind of expect Mafra to just come out and try and put it on Story as quickly as possible and get this fight, an early finish, a surprise finish, and he could. I think Story has the veteran savvy and the technique and the skill to weather an early storm and come back and take a decision. But I do really think this is a trap fight for Rick Story.
And Dallas, your thoughts?
To me, Rick Story is like a prototypical wrestle boxer. Like, kind of, if anyone wanted to mold that style, Story's perfect for that. I mean, there's other guys that I think are more potent. Like, I'm really high on Chad Mendez, the way he's developed his. I mean, he's got venomous stand-up, and he's so smooth the way he does it. But the one thing that is kind of working against, well, I don't know if it's against, but Story's style is, he's very judicious and he's very accurate and he's quick, but he doesn't have a ton of power on his, in his hands. And that's okay, because that's how they teach you, just, don't go for the knockout. I actually think Story would benefit sometimes from really just every once in a while throwing in a curveball to his opponent and sitting down and just, I don't know if I've ever seen him sit down and just heave like a streaker of an overhand. One of those where the guy has got to get the fuck out of the way for it. And I think that would help him maybe in this fight. So I agree with all the variables Zane said. The reason it's going to be tough is I hope Mafra comes out and just unloads because he's short notice. He's obviously not expected to win this match. So for me, if I was him, his best bet is just to come out and light off the cannons with everything he's got. And it's tough for Story because unless Story takes him down and really puts a beating on him, he's the kind of guy, he's surgical. He'll just slowly, slice away at you in, not a big first round finisher. I'm going off memory, so maybe I'm wrong there, but that kind of makes it interesting. So I think Story's the obvious favorite, but Mafra could pee in the pool here. I think he's got a good chance to surprise some people, and he's got nothing to lose. So Story, but with kind of a keep your eyes peeled for Mafra. Another shootbox guy.
Yep, and the odds makers like Story here. They've got him fairly heavily favored, so if you like Zane's line, this might be a good fight to drop a dime on. Story anywhere from -282 all the way up to -327. Leonardo Mafra is the underdog, anywhere from +210 all the way up to +224, and that brings us to the co-main event, lightweights Edson Barboza and Evan Dunham. I made sort of a ill-advised. Did I pick Dunham yesterday, Dallas? Do you remember?
Yeah, and you picked Miller in the main event, and then
Yeah. So I'm probably making a mistake here, but Zane, what do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say you're making a mistake with this pick if you're picking Dunham. I'm not, but I'm not sitting here going, oh yeah, Barboza's just gonna blow him out of the water, because quite frankly, Barboza was blowing Donald Cerrone out of the water before he got knocked the fuck out and with one punch. So saying that Barboza's a safe pick anymore, like I used to kind of look down my nose at people saying that Barboza had a weak chin just because he'd been caught a few times here and there, but he'd never really been Varner basically TKO'd him and didn't quite knock him out. But Cerrone basically just shut his lights out with one punch and then choked him out. It was not pretty. It put some real honest fear that Barboza may be a bit chinny. And Dunham is not chinny, but he's also just too slow and doesn't have the wrestling to make me fear that he's going to really come out and overwhelm Barboza. I mean, it's a stylistic matchup that really easily favors Barboza, somebody who's going to stand and trade with him and not necessarily have the quickness of footwork to not spend a lot of time out at range eating kicks and eating jabs. But I wouldn't I wouldn't put money on Barboza. I think that would be a bad bet.
Are you saying he's a guy you can't trust, or the even worse guy I can't trust anymore category?
Guy I can't trust anymore. Yeah, I mean, it was really that last fight that really made you go, oh God, he could lose at any moment.
Yep. All right, and Dallas, your thoughts on this one?
It's a close fight. Because I have a handful of reasons for picking Barboza, by far doesn't make it a landslide, but kind of a review from yesterday. I love Evan Dunham, but he is amongst the slower, lightweights. And that's foot speed, hand speed, not the most agile guy.
He's not quick to start either. He's a slow starter.
And he's a pretty good wrestler. I would rate him probably like B+, A- in almost every category. He does not have a lot of weaknesses, and he is excellent in transitions and scrambles. He is crafty as hell. So he's kind of like a submission wrestler with some pretty good boxing. He's real predictable. He always throws the same 1-2, and I think that's an underused combination. Sometimes he hooks. He throws a hook before his left cross. But man, I just think the speed, both hand speed, the quickness that Barboza delivers everything, is going to be huge in this one. Dunham's not chinny at all, but Melvin Gillard got him, and this is reminiscent of that matchup. A quick, fast, violent, explosive striker is a terrible matchup for him. And what I really have trouble for, Evan Dunham's got the durability and the heart that could spell trouble Barboza, but Dunham's not a big puncher. He's not really offensively potent, and I don't see many scenarios to me where Evan Dunham can win this, other than taking a lot of punches, and it's going to take a lot of willpower. So close fight. No disrespect to Dunham. I like the kid quite a lot, but I think this really favors Barboza.
And the odds makers agree. They've got Barboza favored anywhere from minus 250 all the way up to minus 242 is the lowest, up to minus 285. And Dunham is the dog from plus 205, plus 197 is the lowest, all the way up to plus 226. And that brings us to the headliner, Donald Cerrone versus Jim Miller. I infamously picked Jim Miller based on home field advantage because he's from New Jersey, he's fighting in New Jersey. And I think he has some advantages over Donald Cerrone, but the more I think about this, the more that is nagging at me, but I'm going to stick with my pick. Zane, we haven't heard from you on this one. What do you think of the main event?
I got to go with Cerrone. And I mean, in some ways, people are saying that, one of our writers I know was saying that they saw the Cerrone-Miller fight and the Barboza-Dunham fight as sort of mirror images of each other in terms of having gritty, hard-nosed, kind of come-forward punchers who are facing much more technical kickboxers they can't trust. But I think Cerrone's a lot more trustable. Cerrone, the type of fighter Cerrone tends to lose to is somebody who is much more technical on the feet than him. I mean, he was losing to Barboza pretty handily before he landed that big counter and put him down. He lost to Rafael Dos Anjos, he lost to Nate Diaz, and he lost to Anthony Pettis, and that's it. There's a certain level of technique and speed and ability to mix up combinations on the feet that Cerrone just can't keep up with. But if that's not there, if that's not what he's up against, he wins. And he's maybe not quite as potent on the ground as Jim Miller, but he has all the ability to survive on the ground with Jim Miller and to stay competitive with Miller, not get caught in something stupid. And then he's just a much, much more potent kickboxer.
Dallas, your thoughts?
The only thing I would add, just along with technique, the strikers Cerrone has lost to have like a certain kind of like, they're fiery, they're explosive. And Jim Miller's got good technique, but he's kind of like a steady Eddie. He's not the kind that's going to just reel off a highlight reel attempt or knockout. I think Miller will have the wrestling advantage here, and that's not to say Cerrone's a poor wrestler, but I think Cowboy's going to be doing his thing on the feet. He actually has started to use his range a lot better, and a lot of that is done with, he likes to use that front kick, the teep, or like just a stomp kick, but I actually like it when he goes heavy on low kicks, because he has got nasty low kicks, and I think that could be effective against Miller. Miller is just the consummate, like, intelligent professional. Never easy to beat, but I think he's going to be able to transition, and he'll be much more inclined to transition rather than, he's not going to want to stand and trade it out with Cerrone. I actually think the clinch phase is heavy favorite on Cerrone here too, much of that due to his height and reach. So this is another one where I don't see a lot of scenarios where Miller can win this, and that he's a great fighter. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I don't know. Cerrone's he's an excellent grappler, especially off his back, and you don't hear it a lot on the ground. But that length is a big deal when you're a technical grappler. It's not much, but I think that's going to help him out a lot here. And mostly, like Zane said, he's not going to be at a huge disadvantage if Miller does get him down. I don't know. I guess let me ask you guys: what's Miller's best chances of winning this? Of course, he could catch him, but to me, it would be maybe catching him in a scramble or getting Cerrone down and really just trying to gain ground and top control. Am I wrong?
I mean, I think the best case, would be for him to come out storming the way he did against Joe Lozon and try to catch him off guard with an elbow inside, and then force him down and try to do a lot of damage from top position. And then go for a quick submission. I don't think he has, one of the few knocks against Cerrone is that he tends to be a slow starter sometimes. So that's that's probably Miller's best shot. I've thought about this and thought about this because both with the Dunham fights and the Miller fight, I made my pick, based on, I don't know, communications from the stars, and then I actually thought about it, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't see a path to victory. So that's kind of like the history of my .com investments, the old underwear gnomes there. But I don't know. That's the best I can come up with. Do you have a scenario where Miller could win this one, Zane?
Not really. I mean, I think the only way would be to just get Cerrone to engage in a really stupid firefight and either catch something in transition, a submission in transition, if they can get into a scramble, or just try and rely on his chin and toughness to be able to just work in the phone booth and try and get Cerrone into a stupid fight. Because Cerrone can be lured at times into a less than intelligent fight if he feels like it. I mean, it's basically just how Cerrone shows up. Whatever he decides makes sense that day. I don't ever, some days you watch him walk in there and it looks like he could just, when he fought Evan Dunham, I don't think there was one thing in the world Evan Dunham could have done to win that fight. Cerrone just mauled him. And then, like, he showed up against Edson Barboza, and he just got taken apart. Like, he was losing every second of that fight until he won it. Like, and so I don't know what he's going to show up like, but even if he shows up bad, Jim Miller just doesn't have the tools to consistently hurt Cerrone in the ways that Cerrone typically gets hurt.
Cerrone reminds me a little bit of the Diaz brothers and what you were just talking about, Zane, in that it's an admirable quality and something I respect. It's a tribute to his and the Diaz brothers' gameness. They'll fight wherever the hell you want to fight. And I respect all of those parties for that, but it can be a flaw. They're confident. They're martial artists. Wherever they go, they're comfortable. They'll sit there and tangle with you, and they're very dynamic in game. And it can play out, especially if someone has a good strategy against you, as a big negative. And I actually really like what you mentioned, Nate, about Miller using elbows, because he did start to pull off some of those. To me, that's the kind of thing he needs more of. He needs to have. He's such a steady Eddie. He's smart, but I think he needs to up the volatility of his offense. He needs to present some weapons that his opponents need to fear. So that's a good suggestion, and he's smart. Anywhere on the feet or in the clinch, he can make little changes. He'll drop and attack your hips and then come up high with an uppercut. He's wily. He's about as wily as they come. So still, given that might be his best chance, I still like Cerrone here.
Yeah, and I don't know. The home field advantage, I don't think it's something to take lightly, though. This is going to be Jim Miller country. He's going to have a lot of friends and family in the crowd. Maybe that'll work against him. Maybe there'll be pressure. But he's also on a little bit of a hot streak with 2 submission wins, and then his loss to Pat Healy was erased because of the Demon Weed Reefer and Healy's indulgence thereof. So, he hasn't lost, doesn't have a loss on his record since he lost to Nate Diaz in May of 2002. So maybe Jim Miller can keep it going. He's got to know this is his last shot at a title run. If he loses this fight, this is a huge step back. He's getting to headline this card. Even in these days of watered-down UFC cards, how many headliners is he going to get in his hometown, especially if he doesn't win this fight? So a lot of pressure, a lot riding on this for Miller, and I think Cerrone just doesn't have as much to lose. He's got a win streak. He's kind of out of title contention, I think, as long as Pettis holds the title. So he's basically just dicking around, and that tends to be his personality anyway. Not somebody known for his forward thinking, known more for his extreme sports indulgences during the off season. He's also
those two things are again good points, Nate, because Jim Miller is the kind of guy where when he's fighting in front of his home crowd, that's a big deal. A lot of times there's little X factors that I don't put a lot of emphasis on. That is one. And that's another good point, that Cerrone at this point, I think everyone knows he might not win every fight, but he's not going anywhere. I mean, the guy is the definition, of excitement, win or lose. Miller doesn't have that luxury anymore. He might know that, like you said, he's not going to be headlining a lot more events. That actually kind of lifts in my mind, the chances for Miller on this. It's hard to, it's not technique or whatever, motivation. I don't know, but Miller's the kind of guy that will look to fight hard in front of his home crowd. Sorry, those are just a couple of things that I think make the case for Miller look a little better.
Yeah, and I think the moral of the story is Kid Nate's still got it. He might be fun in this end, but I can occasionally make even a thoughtful fight prognosticator like Dallas Winston think about his pick. Zane, any final thoughts on this card before we log out?
Sorry, what were we saying?
You see, I take the interviews and I take them from Dallas over to Zane. Like you missed it, Dallas, but Connor was trying to hand the mic over to Zane and skipping me. And I had to point out that I'm Lucky Pierre, and I'm always in the middle. Anyway,
I think it's a great card. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking for all the fights to at least be fun to watch. Honestly, I mean, I may not have gotten really into the Solis Proctor or Tebow Healy fights, but I do actually expect both those fights to be competitive and interesting. I mean, Solis and Proctor, for all of their lack of memorable performances, aren't boring fighters, and Healy and Tebow should be a good matchup. It should be a competitive fight. So it should be a great card top to bottom, and I'm just looking forward to it, honestly.
All right, and we will be back. Hopefully we can do a Care Don't Care for the Dublin card that's coming up Saturday. Haven't checked with Eugene's schedule on that, but we'll aim to do that tomorrow or Thursday, and then aim to do the Vivisection Thursday or Friday. So hopefully one or both of you guys can be back for that Vivisection.
Yeah, I didn't have any final thoughts on the card, Nate, so it's good that you just passed over me.
I thought your final thought was that Kid Nate was right, and Kid Nate made you rethink your Miller Cerrone. I wanted to let you go out on a high note, Dallas. But by all means, if you have final thoughts on the card,
high note.
Let's hear him. Let's hear him.
No, don't argue.
Nope.
The only thing I'd add is we've all in the past, due to the I don't know, torrent of UFC events, been a little down. Maybe it's because they took a little break. I don't know, but I'm actually, not only is this a great card, I'm actually really looking forward to sitting down and watching it. So I just want to make sure I'm fair and balanced. I hardly ever complain, but we did a lot about the UFC's excellent matchmaking. This card on paper is phenomenal, top to bottom.
Yep, so we're excited, and the Dublin card isn't looking too bad either. I think this will be the better of the two fight cards of the week, but the Dublin card has the return of Conor McGregor, so a lot of fun stuff to talk about there. All right, as always, like us on YouTube. That's the big thumb below the video screen here, and there are some meanies who give us down thumbs, so if you like the show, please give us an up. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Read us at BloodyElbow.com. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at KidNate. Dallas is at Uncle Justice, and Zane is at the Zane Simon. And adios, MMA aficionados. We'll see you next time.